Welcome back to Yoga Awakening. I'm Katie. And this class I've titled You're the Teacher. So think of this as a potential daily yoga practice you can keep coming back to meet you where you are. So this practice will have a little bit less structure and a little bit more freedom. Think of it like a choose your own adventure. So we'll get started here with two options. And you'll notice that will be a little bit of a theme in the class. I'll be asking you to choose. You're the teacher. You're stepping into this role of asking, what do I need? What would feel good? And hopefully that means that as you come back to this video, your practice will be quite different every time. So your first two options to get started are a couple of simple movements here in a seat. I'm seated on a blanket. You could come right down to your mat, or a couple of easy movements from tabletop. But those movements can look pretty similar. Ask yourself which might feel nicer. You can, of course, do a little bit of both. But we'll start maybe with some cat-cow from tabletop, or here I'll take these torso or pelvic circles from a seat, and that's sort of incorporating some cat-cow movement as well as I move from center and then around, back. So you could maybe move from a simple cat and cow in your tabletop into some circles with the hips. I'm choosing this one for today. And know, of course, that it's perfectly fine to do exactly what I'm doing throughout the whole practice, and that will be a really nice class. But the invitation here, the encouragement is for you to veer a little bit off course, to maybe do something completely different from what I'm doing, or take me up on one of the options I'm giving. I'm just kind of going with the general idea. So our general idea first is just to get the spine moving a little. To get into the body, you could close your eyes. I'm going to go ahead and take this into a seated twist. You could join me here, or maybe you opt for a little movement through the thoracic spine. If you're in tabletop, it could look a little something like this, with one hand to the back of the head as you open up to one side. So I'm just going to keep planting these seeds, these ideas for you. And you might switch sides with me if you're in some sort of twist. Start to notice your breath. So as we come into the body, we'll come into the breath as well and notice what its quality is today. Maybe we start to take some intentionally deeper breaths, or maybe not even deeper, but just more conscious. You might be finding your way into a new shape, maybe from tabletop, that means into a child's pose to pause, or if you're like me, you're seated, I'm going to experiment with a couple movements for the neck. Start to take the chin off to one side, towards one shoulder. So I'm opening up this space along the side of the neck. As I breathe into the belly, And if you're feeling good here, if you're feeling empowered by the choice and the freedom in this practice, you could also challenge yourself by spending as much of the practice as you can with your eyes closed. Maybe all you really need today is just the structure of having the video on and having my voice in the background. Let's switch sides if you're with me here in this neck stretch over to the left. Or maybe if you're feeling a little intimidated by all the choices, or you're not quite sure yet what the body needs, or maybe it's new for you to have this sort of freedom on your mat, then maybe you are just picking and choosing from each of the options I give and keeping it simple. And I'll find my way back to center. Now I'm going to take some up-down movement, continuing with my neck stretch. If you're in maybe your child's pose, you've come there from tabletop, you could take a side stretch off to either side there. You could rock side to side across the forehead, which would also really be nice for head and neck. Maybe dissipating any tension there. Nice to start with just these simple, smaller movements. Maybe shaking off some tension from the day. I'll turn my up-down movement there into a little bit of a side-to-side, kind of a little windshield wiper motion, or a semicircle motion. Wherever you are, come into stillness. And we'll just take maybe a couple rounds of breath to feel those little movements so far in the body kind of settle in. Maybe this is your moment to really notice. Notice how you're feeling today in this moment. Maybe that starts with noticing how you felt throughout your day so far, whatever part of it you're in. And then pulling that all together as you guide your attention into this moment. Open your eyes if they're closed. Why don't we all together just take some little shakes through the hands, and then through the elbows, and then through the shoulders. And then maybe that turns into a little stretch for the wrist, one at a time. Fingers can point down, and then up. And opposite hand, fingers point down and point up. And then we'll move into all fours, and we'll move through the next few shapes perhaps together. Our first of two brief flows, but of course, because the theme today is freedom, you could do whatever you wanted. Following me or following your own path. So from our tabletop, press into all 10 fingerprints. Bring your hands maybe just a little wider than usual, a little further forwards of the shoulders. Curl the toes under. Press down into the toes to let the knees hover. From there, start to send your sitting bones back, your hips up. Use that momentum to send it all the way back into your down dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And here I am right away in my down dog, sending the heels off to one side of the mat, a little twist, and then taking it through center. Some bent knees and kind of walking the dog here, pedaling out the feet. And then heels both over to the second side. This feels really good for me, but maybe the key for you today is asking what feels really good for you. Is it this or something else? I know I tend to feel a lot of tension there through the backs of the legs. So for me, this is such a nice way to start to tap into a nice feeling of stretch and release. You might take the feet a little wider, hands even wider. And we'll go ahead and pause here in this wide downward facing dog. Big breath in, big breath out. Take it back to maybe your more usual downward dog, a little less wide. We'll send the right leg up on an inhale. Exhale, shift forward, plant that right foot, lower the back knee, coming into our lunge. So a low lunge. You can see I've got a couple of my favorite props here off to the side, so if I needed them or wanted them, maybe a block would be great here to lift the hands up. It's a little bit of a different angle. That feels nice for me, so I'll stay there. You could always pause the video and grab anything you might like to have, but nothing's needed. Just pausing here, hanging out for a moment or two in this low lunge. Noticing the sensations in the body, the shifting energy. Inhale, on an exhale, send it back. Maybe a challenge here is to not use the hands. We come into our runner's lunge. So block could still be nice here. I'll set mine to the side. Flex those right toes up towards the face. You could play with your shape here a little bit, maybe walking the right heel a little further out so you can find this nice stack. Up through the left knee, left hip. A longer spine, or a more rounded one. So this is you choosing your own adventure. No particular goal here in mind today except to be in the body, to be in your experience, and to let that take its own path. Inhale. And exhale. We'll come through back to that low lunge. I'm going to go ahead and lift up on the back knee. Find a little power through this right hip, right leg. And then we're taking it up into some sort of balance on one leg pose. So here's your choice, here are your options. Maybe a standing split. Maybe it's lifting up, hands at heart center, warrior 3. Maybe it's grabbing that block, if you have it, sending it out in front, opening it up, half moon. So any of those options, maybe you pick something else altogether. We'll take one more breath in here. On an exhale, it's a light plant of that back foot, as light as you can get it. And then peaceful warrior. Feel that nice stretch through both sides of the body as you lift the torso up and out. Come through to plant your hands, and here you're welcome to move through some sort of sun salutation. Working in whichever poses there you like best. We'll meet in down dog. We'll take that right over to the second side. Inhale, left leg lifts. Exhale, step it through. Back, knee lowers. You could come up and use that block like I was doing on the first side and here. Or maybe a different variation of your low lunge. And let's take it through runner's lunge. Maybe that's shifting through with no hands. Left toes flex up towards the face. A little micro bend at least through that left leg. Finding your version of the pose here, spine long, spine rounded, somewhere in the middle. And then we'll step it through. So you'll notice here I'm leaving you plenty of time to linger. So maybe that means adding in an extra pose of your choice. Maybe wiggling around a little in the shape to find a new space. So take this into whatever your balance on one leg pose was on your first side. Maybe that's experimenting with your half moon. Maybe you're coming through all three of them like I am as I demonstrate. Finding a little more fieriness. And as you're ready, on that exhale, light step back, peaceful warrior. that lift even through now the right side waist. Grounding down to lift up. And then we'll take this through right to downward facing dog. And then to child's pose. Come back to center. Use this moment or two here to reconnect. Reconnect with the breath. And we'll come on up. We've got one more really simple flow here. So from down dog, I'm going to step the right foot through, plant the back foot, and come on up to face the side of the mat. And you could really come up either side to face either side of the mat. Probably best to face the video here so you can see me. And here I am in my nice big star pose. Let's take it through from our star into our goddess, hands at heart center. Sink down low. I always like to take this little sway as I come in. Let's take a couple dips of the shoulders to either side. So for this one, I like to sink down, maybe even a little lower, and then really ground the hands into the tops of the thighs. And then from here, I'll dip the right shoulder down as I look over to the left, maybe opening there through the chest. And then through center, dip the left shoulder down as you open the chest to the right, gaze to the right. And there's your little flow, as simple as that. So again, maybe you're flowing with me here, following your breath. Could be an exhale to dip the shoulder, and maybe an inhale as you pause. Maybe you're finding your own path in a different flow, or maybe in some calming shapes on the back. That's where we'll head next. And come on back through to center. Sit at low one more time. Hands at Anjali Mudra. And then we'll take it through and just lower down momentarily into our wide-legged forward fold, Prasarita Padottanasana. You might opt for a neutral spine or a more rounded one. Final little challenge here. Feel the legs engage, lift up through the centers of the feet, hands to the hips. A little more challenge perhaps, hands out in front. Knit the low ribs in, imagine pulling front body up to back body. And then we lift up back to star pose. Let's take it down on to the back. Getting there however you like. We'll just have a couple of options here before we end our practice. You might like to take some bridge lifts and lowers, lifting the hips as you inhale, and then maybe that's a really slow exhale as you descend. Articulating through the spine. Maybe instead you'd like a spinal twist. You could start there with knees in towards chest. Or you could stay here, knees in towards chest. Maybe this variation that I like of happy baby, grabbing the ankles, or the shins, or the toes, as you send the knees wide. Might feel nice for the low back. Maybe you're off already on one side of your spinal twist. I think I'll end there. Arms any way you like, maybe cactus or out at a T. Maybe there's a different pose you'd like to choose. Maybe that's a pose you've been working on. Something you're challenging yourself with. Or maybe that's a yin or restorative shape to end. You can gather up any props or towels or blankets or pillows you might have lying around. Let's take it into our second side of our twist if you're here with me. I hope that this practice has left you feeling more confident in your personal practice, your home practice, which is really this intimate opportunity to ask yourself what you need, to check in maybe in a deeper way. It can also be challenging just to find the time to arrive on the mat, to think up something to do. So come back to this video whenever you need just a little bit of structure. I'll choose to end here in Shavasana. This is where I'll leave you, so if you have maybe one more minute, you could come up to a seat and close the eyes and maybe shift into a few moments of meditation. Or you could stay here. Meeting yourself right where you are. Let's draw the hands to heart center. The light in me bows to the light in you. Namaste.